Hello, my name is Dennis, and welcome to my trailer park white trash mobile home kitchen. I really do live in a mobile home, in a trailer park, and this is my kitchen. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I absolutely love the flavor of lamb. In fact, if I'm going to be eating red meat at all, I'm going to eat lamb. I rarely ever buy beef. So what I want to make today is Moroccan style lamb. It's a lamb that's slow cooked for 3.5 hours, 325 degrees, but it's coated with a rub made of coriander, cumin, other spices. Lamb has a bold flavor to it, so it really helps to add other flavors to complement that boldness, and you get a nice hearty flavored meat afterwards. So I've mentioned some of the ingredients. Let's get into the ingredients that I'm using for making my slow roasted lamb with cumin. This is rather an easy dish to make because you just basically mix up your spices, coat the lamb, and then roast it. The real trick is the long time that it's going to roast. I have here a boneless leg of lamb that I buy at the warehouse store. This is about 5 3/4 pounds. So you need a 5 to 6 pound leg of lamb, which is 2 1/4 to 2 3/4 kilogram roughly, either with the bone in or without. This is boneless, which I like, and I'll show you the reason why in a moment. Then I have 2 ounces, which is about 70 grams of butter, softened at room temperature, 3 cloves of garlic that I'll be crushing or mincing fine, 2 teaspoons ground cumin, 3 teaspoons ground coriander, 1 teaspoon paprika, and then finally 1/2 teaspoon salt. And if you want, it's customary to make a garnish at the table by mixing 1 tablespoon of ground cumin with 1.5 teaspoons salt for people to sprinkle over their meat when they eat it. I don't know that I'm going to do that. I might give it a try, but that's optional. All right, so let me get into preparing my leg of lamb for roasting. My first step on this is I want to remove this elastic, whatever this stuff is. I don't know what the full butcher term for this would be. It's like tying a roast, but this elastic piece holds it together. And then normally what I would do when I work with lamb is I would trim all this fat off. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to roast this with the rind, the fatty rind side up, and that will rend and coat the meat a little bit. I am going to be basting this while it's in the oven, but between the basting and this rind rending, that will give me a nicely moist meat. I am going to be scoring this though with a knife when I'm ready to start putting my rub onto it. So this is prepared. I'm also going to coat the inside of this. I might as well do the inside. Put a little bit of the seasoning in here. It'll just give it a little more flavor. And then I'm going to tie this and roast it. So my next step now is to prepare my rub. I'm going to combine my rub ingredients here in a bowl. Butter. I chopped my garlic. Actually, I ran it through a garlic press. Coriander, cumin, salt, and paprika. All right, and then just mix this up to form a paste. This is why you need that butter warm at room temperature. If it was cold from the refrigerator, it wouldn't mix like this. And there goes a plane overhead. Yes, I live near the airport. Okay, it kind of looks like a Dijon mustard, doesn't it? So there's our rub. Next step is to start prepping the lamb for the rub. With a sharp knife, score through the lamb. I'm cutting actually right down just through this rind, because I want the flavor of the rub to get into the meat a little bit. I'll do that side when I spin this around. And also when this rends, having this cut like this will also help it a little bit as far as rending, releasing some of its fat. Just checking. I'm going to pull some of this skin off because I don't need that. In fact, I can trim most of this, I think. Because this is not really fatty, and this is not going to give me a lot of flavor. While I'm doing this, let me explain that I have the oven heating to 425 degrees initially. I know earlier I said I was going to bake this at 325? It's going to bake for 10 minutes at 425 with the rack in the upper part of the oven. So I have a rack in the upper part of my oven. And then after 10 minutes, you can reduce the heat to 425. Start basting, and then it'll roast for 3.5 hours, 3.25 hours at 325. Okay. I like that. So I have gone down right through the rind. You can see the meat underneath there. That's what I want because I want the flavor of my rub to get down into that meat. As I mentioned earlier, I want to put some of this coating, not much, just a little bit on the inside of the meat. Spread it around thinly. It'll be kind of a nice surprise to have this flavor actually inside of my meat when my guests are eating this. I have one friend who just adores lamb. He likes lamb as much as I do. So he'll be getting some of this. Okay, and then put the rest of this on top. And if you're nervous about the aroma being on your hands, then wear gloves. You want to spread this around evenly and push it into the grooves on the top. Last of this on the bottom. Okay. So there's my roast. Got a lot on the cutting board here, but actually I'll scrape that up and put that on the top. What I'm going to do next is, well, wash my hands, and then I'm going to tie this into a nicely shaped roast so that it'll roast evenly. I have here some cotton kitchen twine. 1, 2, 3. Someone taught me how to do a surgeon's knot, which that holds pretty decent. like so. One more at this end. There we go. And then I like to put one around the whole thing to hold the ends in. That's one of the problems with a deboned roast is it needs to be tied. Okay, that is ready for the oven. Place your roast in a deep roasting pan. My oven just beeped, so it's up to temperature. I have a rack in the upper part of the oven. So for the first 10 minutes, I'm going to roast this at 425 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 220 degrees centigrade. And then I'm going to remove it from the oven, baste it with any juices that might have collected at the bottom of this pan in that little time, 10 minutes. But I'm also going to reduce the oven to 325 degrees, and I'm going to move the top rack down to the middle part of the oven. And then I'm going to roast this at 325 for 3¼ hours, and about every 20 to 30 minutes I'll be gathering up the juices with a baster and basting it so that it stays moist. Here's a trick for you. I've got a glass baster. I don't want to be sucking up boiling hot juices with cold glass. I'm afraid that I'm going to crack or break the glass. So I've got a pan of water, cold water, heating on the stove, and I'm keeping my baster in there so it'll gently warm up. I have a wooden spoon here so that the rubber bulb doesn't come in contact with the hot pan. And then I have a bottle of wine here just in case if my roast should, or if the juices rather, should boil dry in the bottom of my pan, I'm not going to have anything with which to baste my roast. So every 20 minutes when I check it for basting it, if I see that it's starting to boil dry, I'm going to add a little bit of white wine, maybe ¼ cup at a time, to the bottom of the pan just to keep some juice in there, so I'll have something with which to baste my roast. I just moved my roast down to the middle of the oven and changed my temperature down to 325 degrees. It's going to roast in there for 3 hours and 15 minutes. I've got to set my timer. And then right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go shopping. I think something a little sweet would taste good with this. So what I'm going to buy at the store is some squash, butternut squash, and I'm going to buy a yam. And I'm going to cut those up into maybe 1-inch chunks after I peel them, of course. Dredge them in a little bit of olive oil and some herbs like oregano. And then about 45 minutes before my roast comes out of the oven, I'm going to put the vegetables in. So I'll have some squash and yam to eat with my lamb. My lamb has got about 45 minutes longer to roast. So I did go to the store and I bought some yam and I bought some butternut squash, peeled it, chopped it up to maybe a 1-inch or so chop, bite-sized pieces. And this is about half of each of what I bought. I've got extras for later. I'm going to put some extra virgin olive oil on this, a few tablespoons, salt lightly, little fresh ground black pepper, and then some dry oregano flakes. This is a great way to prepare I think, vegetables for a roast. I've done this with white potatoes along with pieces of different kinds of squash and sweet potatoes. You can use parsnips in this. You can put in some rutabaga, whatever you like, and mix them all together in a small roasting pan. If you want to make a lot, use a large roasting pan. Get these all mixed around to get them nicely covered with that olive oil. Okay. And then this is going to go into the oven and roast with the lamb for its last 45 minutes. And this should be nice and tender, even maybe a little bit browned on the outside. These will be delicious with my roast lamb. Okay, if you're normally incontinent, you might want to make sure there's room in your diapers before you look at this. There it is. I removed this from the oven and let it rest for 15 minutes. The vegetables weren't quite soft enough yet, so I left those in the oven so that they would be completely cooked. The next step now is to slice this, put it on a plate, and see how good it tastes. Okay, the way this is traditionally served is you cut off a thick slice, like that, and then you cut halfway through it, and that's what goes on to the diner's plate, and then they slice it on their plate. Oh, look at that. That looks so beautiful. So let me get this plated and see how it tastes. That's how I would plate it. A nice big piece on the plate, plenty of roasted vegetables on the side, that squash and sweet potatoes. Last step is to taste this. Okay, I want to see how good this is going to taste. It looks tender. It is tender. See, all that spice does not come out as real strong. It's very delicate, very light. Check my vegetables here. Oh, that is just fantastic. Okay. It's a little early. It's not even 4 o'clock yet, but I'm going to go have my dinner. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit the White Trash Cooking website and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.